What is their, their surname or their last name? How do they speak? What type of music do they listen to? All of those things that are accompanied to culture. For a long time, the model was dominated by the model that was created and dominated by the people who disproportionately controlled the United States. And we're talking about upper middle class, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant men. And their power has been dwindling. And not everybody responding to that well. Not just white people. Other folks to one degree or another have sort of internalized that dynamic and find it difficult to move beyond that paradigm as well. So that's what I do. And the talk that I came up with tonight is simply because I think Barack Obama, notwithstanding the fact that his presidency really is a seismic shift in America, okay? The fact that we elected not only 40 years outside of Jim Crow segregation, a person of African descent to the highest executive office in the United States is a remarkable feat. Mm-hmm. It's just a remarkable feat by any standard. Even when I was a child in the 70s, and I'm marking myself now in terms of how old I am, but even as a child, I won't tell you what into the 70s, right? But even as a child when I was in the 70s, we were still reeling from school integration and busing. And one of my first experiences was seeing whites in Boston throwing bricks at young black kids trying to integrate high school, spitting on them, calling them names. And I'm thinking to myself, in school I'm being taught about how progressive America is and how we're the melting pot and all these other things. But I'm turning on the TV and I'm seeing these children, right, being brutalized on their way to school to learn how to read and to write. And I remember one particular episode where they were showing a riot in downtown Boston where an African-American man was being held by 3 or 4 individuals while 2 other young white guys were holding an American flag and were getting ready to, it's a very famous photo, we're getting ready to spear him with the flag, which I think was a very symbolic representation of what was going on. And that troubled me. This is in the 1970s, right? And even with the election of Obama, I was stunned at the not so latent racist sentiment that was uncovered and unleashed when folks realized that this was a man who had a legitimate shot of winning. See, his ascendancy happened so fast until it caught a lot of people off guard. Mm. A lot of people saw his address at the 2004 convention. They thought, this guy is something else. He may have a shot, right? And the next thing you know, he's running for the Senate, he's winning, and then he's announcing for the presidency. And then it's even folks on the left, were thinking, oh, this is actually something that might happen. And then he was inaugurated. And I think a lot of people, the frustration, the angst, and the fear bubble over. And you saw it in the newspapers, you saw it in the media, you saw it in the rhetoric, you saw it on the floor of Congress where Joe Wilson shouted at the president for the first time since the 19th century, "You lie," during one of his presidential addresses. That hadn't happened in over 100 years. But we had supposedly advanced a lot in 100 years. The lack of respect, not just for the person, but for the office. Because now the office was seen as being tainted because of who was in it. Right? So before, even if somebody disagreed with the president, they showed a modicum of respect for the office because it was the office. Mm. What we've seen since Barack Obama has come in the office is the opposite. And I think a lot of it stems from this fear and this angst that folks have. I also wanted to deal quickly, and then I'll just stop because I want to talk with you. I also wanted to deal with this issue of success and failure. How do we assess this presidency? Because, Dino and I have had this conversation before. He's come to the conferences, and we've all had these long conversations. And I think the expectations of Obama in the United States and abroad were so astronomically high that there was no way that he could meet them. On the other hand, he fed a lot of that with the rhetoric of his campaign, hope and change, right? There's a new day in America. Even somebody who looks like me with my background can become president of the United States, right? They let everybody know, his campaign, that his father was Kenyan. Let everybody know that his grandparents who raised him were white and working class. And they used it. It's true. They weren't making it up. Mm-hmm. But in doing so and emphasizing that, they fed this belief that America had reached a point of racial reconciliation that it hadn't. And then when he was in power, and folks actually had to address him as Mr. President, and deal with the fact that the most powerful executive in the country was actually an African American who may in fact want to represent some African American issues, that's when you had a historic stonewalling, filibustering in Congress that we haven't seen since Reconstruction. No matter what he proposed, they opposed it. Some folks were mad that some things that they wanted didn't get passed. I can understand some of his actions, particularly some of the things that he's okayed militarily in violation of international law, has bothered folks. It's bothered me. So we've tried to assess what that means. What type of a politician is he? These are questions that I wanted to address as well. If you study his background, read his autobiography, studied his voting record in the State House and his brief record in the Senate, none of what he's done has really surprised me. Because at the end of the day, he's a politician. He's a politician. You do not emerge from Chicago to enter the U.S. Senate to become President of the United States and be black without being a politician. Just doesn't happen. It would be folly to assume that he doesn't have some cunning about him and perhaps a little bit of political ruthlessness. And I don't say that as a critique. I say that as simply a reality in the political world, which means he's perfectly willing and able to make political decisions that not everybody's going to agree with. Based upon political calculations, 95% of African Americans voted for him. 92% of African Americans voted for Bill Clinton. Okay? I don't think he has to worry about the African American vote. And that may sound cold to a lot of folks and frustrating, but it's a political reality. 62% of Latinos voted for Barack Obama. I think it was 67% of Asian Americans voted for Barack Obama. 70% of the gay, lesbian, and bisexual community voted for Barack Obama. Most of the coast of the United States voted for Barack Obama. He knows who is in his corner. He knows he's disappointed some of them, but he's a politician. So when we're evaluating his record, I think we need to not make excuses for him or let him off the hook, but have an understanding of who we voted for, those who voted for him. Now things are a little different. The race is tighter. I think in part because we're voting not for the symbol, because I think that's what we voted for the most part, those who voted for him and supported him. We voted for the symbol. Now we're faced with voting for the man. And that's not my idea. A friend of mine, Jelani Cobb, wrote this in a great piece in the New Yorker that was published yesterday. And so this speech really that I'm giving is dealing with all of this, trying to put him in historical context, trying to evaluate his strengths and weaknesses his first 4 years, and then his prospects for re-election. And I'll stop there, because you may have questions or dialogue or some things that I don't want to assume I know what you want to talk about. So I'm interested in actually having a conversation.